This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. A ceremony being conducted by the Children of the Watch to induct a new young child into the Mandalorian clan is interrupted by an attack of a large creature coming out of the sea, and the Mandalorians desperately try to fight it off, but fail to wound it significantly until a ship flies in and is able to shoot the beast and kill it. And exiting from the ship, it is revealed to be Din Djarin, who has returned to meet with the armorer. And meeting with her, he once again tries to figure out how he can be redeemed and wants to go to Mandalore. And the armorer says that is impossible since the Empire destroyed Mandalore. But Djarin shows her a piece of Mandalore that was discovered by someone who's claimed to be on the planet. And with this, he says there's a chance for him to return. And if he is, he will go there and be bathed and be forgiven. She simply responds that this is the way. On the way to his next location, Grogu looks out into hyperspace and sees a Purrgil flying by. Going and landing on Nevarro, Djarin goes in to meet with his good friend Greef Karga before he steps by a statue commemorating IG-11 in his sacrifice, and then meets up with Magistrate Karga. Going to his office, the two begin to discuss life on Nevarro and how things have changed, and how Grief Karga has transformed it, and it has become a big center. And Karga begs for Mando to stay and become their new marshal after Marshal Cara Dune was recruited into the Republic Special Forces after the capture of Moff Gideon. Karga is called away to meet with a gang of pirates who demand to meet with Karga inside of the school, which was formerly a bar, and they make sure to make this clear to him that they need to meet there, and Karga refuses, telling them to go and meet in his office. And with this, things begin to escalate as they all begin to get ready to draw their blasters. And Karga does manage to shoot the blaster out of the leader's hands, but he orders his men to attack, but they're quickly cut down by Karga and Djarin together, leaving the highest ranking member alive to go back and warn the pirates that they will not be messed with, and Nevarro is now a free planet. Karga begs for Djarin to stay behind and stay inside of Nevarro to help protect them, but he says that he has prior commitments, and with this, he asks for help restoring IG-11. Although Karga says it is impossible, Djarin wants to try. He then is able to partially restore IG-11 and connect him to power, but with this, Queel's program was overridden by the base programming being an assassin droid and attempts to assassinate Grogu. With this, Djarin opens fire upon the droid and is eventually able to take him down with the help of a droid, shoving a giant bust of Grief Karga upon it, crushing the droid's head. Going to get professional help, Djarin learns that there's nothing that can be done to fully restore the droid unless I can get a new memory circuit, and this type of droid has been out of production, so it's not going to be easy to find. Djarin says he will find it and goes off. While in space, Djarin begins to teach Grogu how to fly the ship and what the different instruments on the control panel mean. Quickly, an alert goes off that there are hostile ships approaching, and with it, Djarin quickly learns that the pirates want revenge and are going to try and take him out. With it, he even rushes into an asteroid field and begins to slowly pick them off and gets most of them. But after going after the last ship, he quickly realizes he was led into a trap, and the pirates' command ship is there. And with it, the pirates' leader tells him to surrender, knowing that it's not wise to trust a pirate. Djarin uses the boosters built into his N1 starfighter to escape from the situation. Djarin now lands at a Mandalorian castle, and exiting out, he goes in to meet with Bo-Katan, and she is still furious at him, saying the rest of the Mandalorians have left her since she was not able to reclaim the dark saber. And with it, John asks for the location of the hidden mines and where the rivers under it would be, and she tells him that they'll be under the capital of Sindari. With it, Jaren thanks her and leaves. On the planet of Tatooine, Pelimoto goes and scams one of the Rhodians, having Jawa steal parts to his speeder and charging ridiculous prices to have it fully repaired. And after he leaves, Din Djarin returns, looking for the pieces he needs to repair IG-11. And after talking to Pelly, she says that this is not going to be possible for her to get, and the Jawas won't be able to get it either. And she offers him R5D4, the droid that was once nearly purchased by Owen Lars and Luke Skywalker. And with this, he agrees, and Pelly modifies the starfighter back to its original purpose, reinstalling the astromech port. And with this, he is ready to go to Mandalore. Jaren flies in and looks upon the planet which is so important to his people, telling Grogu how he has never been here and grew up on the moon of Concordia. And after this, they fly into the planet and learn that because of all the bombings that took place, all the sensors have been scrambled and they won't be able to get messages off planet. R5 is sent out to go see if the atmosphere is breathable, but quickly disappears off their sensors, and knowing he has to go figure out what happened, Din tells Grogu to stay with the ship as he pressurizes his helmet and goes out to see what has happened. Din is quickly ambushed by creatures that once roamed Mandalore's surface, and with this he's able to save R5 and bring him back to the ship. And with this, they complete their diagnostic scans of the planet and quickly learn that the atmosphere is breathable and there is no deadly radiation in it. Jaren and Grogu head into the civic center of Sundari, where they begin to descend down so they can make it towards the mines. Making it to the street level, they begin to look around the city, and with this, they continue on until Jaren finds a old Mandalorian helmet buried in the ground. But it quickly turns out that this is a trap, and a cage closes around Jaren, giving him no room to move. And since he is trapped, he is dragged away as Grogu follows him. Once Grogu reaches the same location, he sees an odd creature begin to disarm Jaren, and then he goes to do other things. Grogu tries to rescue him, but isn't able to. Jaren begs for him to go get Bo-Katan's help, and Grogu goes, escaping from the planet of Mandalore. As the N1 starfighter lands, Bo-Katan is pretty furious and goes to tell Jaren that she doesn't want to deal with him, but is quickly concerned when all she sees is Grogu inside of the fighter. She quickly asks him what happened, and not getting a response, she goes to hook up the droid R5's memory system to figure out what happened. She quickly takes Grogu to Mandalore to go and help save Jaren. Bo-Katan begins to follow Grogu as he leads her through the city and goes down once again to the streets. And when there, Grogu is pretty frightened, and Bo-Katan does reassure him and tells him that everything will be alright. Bo-Katan manages to fight off more of the creatures and then goes and begins to rescue Jaren, having to fight off the creature in two different bodies of armor. And after she does this, she takes Jaren to safety. And while there, she makes a traditional Mandalorian soup and begins to discuss things with Jaren about her past and her experience with the rituals of Mandalore. And with this, she agrees to go with him and leads him to the entrance of the mines of Mandalore. Entering near the living waters, Bo-Katan mockingly reads off a plaque that explains how the first Mandalore, Mandalore the Great, was able to tame the mighty mythosaur here, and how that after this, the mythosaur was taken as a symbol of Mandalorian strength, and after this, Jon prepares to get into the living waters and begins to recite the creed of the Mandalore, but after he takes a few steps in, there turns out to be a giant gap and he falls in, heading down towards the bottom with his armor weighing him down. Bo-Katan jumps in immediately after to go and save him. Bo-Katan reaches the bottom and manages to pull Jon up, and as they ascend to the top, she is in shock as she sees one of the mighty mythosaur still alive and living in the waters of Mandalore. She makes it to the top in shock and puts Jon out to rest and catches breath from being in the water. On Mandalore, Din Djarin and Bo-Katan begin to discuss what has happened, and Bo-Katan asks if Din has seen anything. Din says no, and Bo decides not to mention her seeing a mythosaur. With it, they go to leave the planet and return to Bo's fortress so Din could return to his people. But after leaving, they are ambushed by TIE interceptors. As they are pursued, they continue to rush on, and with this, they make it to the planet, and with it, they begin to descend. So Din could get to his starfighter to help Bo fight off the fighters. Din jumps out of the Mandalorian fighter so he can get to his ship, going past many of the TIE interceptors. He makes it to his N1 starfighter, and entering it, he takes off and begins to pick off some of the fighters pursuing Bo-Katan. Together, the two are able to take out all the TIE interceptors, and before they can return to the fortress, TIE bombers start to attack and bomb the fortress into oblivion. Bo-Katan wants to get revenge and begins to fire upon them, but Din sees that there are far too many for them to deal with, and both escape into hyperspace. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Dr. Pershing is giving a speech and telling about how he is so grateful for the new opportunities he's had and how he wants to be loyal to the New Republic and through it use his skills in cloning to be able to help them. And after exiting, he's congratulated by many of the people outside and is told how good of a job he has done and that it's very interesting for him to be able to escape from the Empire. Pershing returns to his settlement where many other Imperials that are getting a second chance are, and with it he meets up with them, including one of the officers that worked on Moff Gideon's ship. They begin to discuss things that they missed from the Imperial time, and Pershing mentions that he really misses the taste of one of the many things the Imperials had to eat, and later that night, this is left outside of his door. Pershing continues to do his work, and later that night, he goes with this officer that he used to work with and begins to tour Coruscant, and they come to one of the only remaining parts of the planet visible from the upper levels, the tallest peak of a mountain, and with this they begin to look upon it, and she tells Pershing to go and touch it, that it's fine. Quickly, the droids come, and they both laugh at the little joke she pulled on him, and continue on to their home, where they begin to discuss Pershing continuing his research on how it could be beneficial to the New Republic. Meeting up with his droid parole officer, Pershing begins to question if it is possible for him to continue his research, and the droid tells him that cloning is illegal in the New Republic, and Pershing is disappointed and begins to talk with his new friend about it, and begins to consider breaking into a facility so he could take the materials that he needs to continue his work to prove that this is helpful to the New Republic, but is not fully convinced yet. And back at work, Pershing begins to ask about using some of this Imperial technology that is being destroyed, and one of his supervisors tells him how this is not going to happen, and it seems extremely unlikely. They just need to be decommissioning all of the Imperial technology, and with this helps Pershing begin to make his decisions. Once again, meeting with the droid, he talks to him about how the number one priority of the New Republic is to protect the Republic and push its interests forward, and the droid confirms this. And with this, Pershing decides that he has to go and take this technology so he can continue his research. Going to the train station, they begin to make their plans and sneak onto one of the hover trains, and through it they see that the droid conductor is coming through to collect tickets, and they quickly run to each car to escape from him. Make it to the end, they jump off to the platform so they can make it to the Imperial decommissioning facility, and we get to look on as they see Star Destroyers being taken apart. Making it into one of the ships, they begin to investigate around and make it into a mobile lab, where Pershing begins to take the supplies he will need to begin his research. He also gets a formal introduction to his new friend, and she tells him that her name is Elia Kane, and the two together begin to run off the ship as they hear security coming in, and they are surrounded by New Republic forces, but it's quickly realized by Pershing that Elia has betrayed him and turned him over to the New Republic, and he begs for them to not do anything as he is arrested and taken into New Republic custody. Awakening inside of the New Republic holding facility, Pershing is told that a procedure is going to be done on him to make sure he is a little more compliant with the New Republic and his brainwashing by the Empire is taken away. He recognizes the machine and pleads for them not to do it, saying that he was set up, and they just look upon him and tell him that this is going to help him and it's not going to hurt him, but he still continues to plead as they ignore him and put the device on him and begin the procedure. Elia asks if she could stay behind with her friend to be there for him, and the Republic officer agrees, and she's actually there to make the procedure more intense and cause some permanent damage to Pershing. Meanwhile, Din Djarin and Bo-Katan land and meet with the Mandalorian in covert. Din advises Bo to not remove her helmet, so it will cause less problems in the covert. And while there, they meet with Paz Vizsla, who doesn't want to admit any of them initially, but Din says that he has been redeemed and bathed in the living waters underneath the mines of Mandalore and has brought proof. So Paz brings them inside to meet with the armorer, and there Din once again makes his claim, and Bo says that she was a witness and jumped in to save him after she saw him fall into the depths of the waters. And with this, the armorer takes the water and tests it, realizing it is purely from the mines of Mandalore. She lets in Din Djarin once again into the covert, but also goes to Bo-Katan and tells her that she can join them if she wants. And Bo-Katan initially refuses. She is asked if she's ever removed her helmet since she was in the waters, and she tells the truth, saying that she has not yet. And with this, the armorer tells her that as long as she wants, as long as she doesn't remove her helmet, she can be part of this covert. And everyone goes around congratulating both Din and Bo as Bo looks on. The members of the Mandalorian covert begin to train and go through different practicing of motions and using their weapons. Meanwhile, Grogu is watching crabs crawl across the beach, and Din goes to Grogu to have him do some training and go against one of the young Mandalorians. And in this, they are going to be doing a combat scenario to try and get Grogu some training. They are going to do a scenario where they use dart launchers to fire paint darts at each other, and whoever manages to get three on the opposing Mandalorian will be the one who wins. And initially, Grogu doesn't want to do much with his powers and is hit twice, but after a pep talk from Din, he jumps over the young Mandalorian, jumping back and shoots him 3 times, winning the match. The young Mandalorian walks off, but is quickly taken by a large bird, and Din, Paz, and some other Mandalorians take off to follow. Their jetpacks run out of fuel, and they're not able to continue the pursuit, but Bo-Katan and her fighter continues on, following after the bird and learning where its nest is. Returning to the covert, Bo, the armorer, Din, and Paz begin to plan out their mission, and Bo-Katan is going to leave the war party to rescue the young Mandalorian. Both Din and Paz, along with a group of Mandalorians, will follow. Grogu stays behind and watches as the armorer crafts him a new piece of armor, and the sparks from the crafting reminds Grogu of how he escaped from Order 66. Around 30 years prior to this, the Jedi Knights at the Jedi Temple are beginning to be cut down by clone troopers who are storming the temple. Grogu is pushed into an elevator to be able to escape. Making it outside, he is met by Jedi Master Kelleran Beck, who begins to fight off the clone troopers and is quickly able to commandeer a speeder so they can escape from the doomed Jedi Temple. And as they flee, a LAAT gunship begins to pursue them, flying through the levels of Coruscant. They try to avoid it and are eventually able to make it into a tunnel, destroying the gunship by crashing it into a train. They head towards a landing platform where they meet up with a group of Nabooian guards. Another gunship lands there. As Beck gets onto the ship and prepares it for launch, the guards are quickly cut down as he manages to take off and escapes from Coruscant's atmosphere. Pursued by V-Wings, he manages to make it to hyperspace. Once Grogu returns from the flashback, he is given a piece of armor by the armorer, which has his clan signet of the Mudhorn on it. Returning to Bo's war party, they land nearby, not wanting to startle the bird so it doesn't kill the young Mandalorian. They make camp so they can assault the bird in the morning, knowing there is no way for them to get up and be able to successfully battle it at night. Surrounding their fire, they pass out food and each go off to eat on their own. Although Bo is left with the fire since she is the leader of the party, she gets to get the place of honor by the fire. Beginning to scale the mountain, the Mandalorians climb up, and once they reach the top, Pez charges in, since this young Mandalorian is his son, and this startles the bird, which begins to attack them and takes his son into the air to try and get away. And while Bo-Katan is trying to save him, she is knocked loose, losing a part of her armor. Din flies in and manages to stab the giant bird, knocking the young Mandalorian loose, and using his jetpack, he's able to rescue him. As the rest of the Mandalorians take down the giant bird, Din reunites Pez with his son, and Pez is extremely grateful for this, as Din and the rest return in victory. The Mandalorians celebrate this and see that the bird's young children have been taken in by the Mandalorians to be used by them. Bo and the armorer begin to discuss things as she gets a new part of her armor forged by her, and with it she decides to put in the signet of the mythosaur to go along the Night Owl one. And as they begin to discuss things, Bo asks about her seeing the mythosaur, and not fully understanding the armor, thinks it's a vision, and simply says this is the way. Once Bo said that she saw a real mythosaur in the living waters. On Navarro, Grief Karga is looking into many improvements he could make to the city and use it to improve it greatly when pirate captain Gorian Shard contacts him and begins to threaten him, telling him that he has come for revenge and begins to fire his ship's cannons upon the city and causes mass panic as Grief Karga desperately sends a message to the New Republic for help. This message is received by Carson Tiva, who wants to help Magistrate Karga and wants to go for help. After reviewing the message, he begins to speak with the rebel hero Lestat Garazeb Aurelius about how the state of the galaxy is and just how he really wants to help the planet, but Zeb thinks that it is unlikely and there is too much red tape to go through, so Tiva says he's going to go straight to Coruscant. And Tiva begins his meeting with one of the higher ups in the New Republic, but he seems very disinterested. And once Elia Kane enters in and begins to tell him about Navarro and how it's not a member world, no help is going to be offered to Navarro. Was made really clear by the officer, and Tiva is angered by this and sees an Imperial being here as a betrayal and is a little insulted by her presence, but knows there's nothing he could do, so he goes off to seek for help elsewhere. Back in Navarro, Grief Karga, unknowing of the events taking place on Coruscant, tries to reassure the people, telling them that help from the New Republic will arrive soon. Meanwhile, Tiva has managed to track down the Mandalorian covert and lands his X-Wing and just asks for a chance to talk as the Mandalorians have their weapons aimed at him and go out to tell him to get away. And he reveals that R5 has revealed their location to him to help, and Din Djarin talks to other Mandalorians out of killing him, telling him that this man has gave him a few passes in the past and he wants to return the favor. And Tiva asks for Din to step to the side to talk to him. And when they begin to talk, he tells him of everything that's happening with Grief Karga and he needs his help. And Din knows he has to help his friend and sees Tiva off. He then goes to the Mandalorians and presents a case before them, begging them to help his good friend. And even though they have fought in the past, he tells them that they are ultimately on the same side and have been offered a piece of land on Navarro, and they could use it to have somewhere to live in the light of day and be able to have a permanent place of settlement. He then goes to sit down as any other Mandalorians that wish to speak up could, and Pez Vizsla takes this opportunity, beginning in a little bit of a negative way, saying all the negatives in this plan and they really don't owe him anything besides Din and wondering if there should be this much protection for the foundling Grogu. But he quickly begins to turn around saying that that's at the point that they are the Mandalorians and they should do this, and this will be a great opportunity for their future, and that both Din and Bo showed they were true Mandalorians by going to rescue his son. And through this, the decision is made, and the operation will begin soon. Bo Katan begins to break down the plan, telling everyone their parts as they're going to take the city as her and Din go and take out the pirate fighters in command ship. Back in Navarro, chaos is shown as all of the pirates go on a rampage through the city, doing really whatever they want and causing mass destruction and chaos, terrorizing the citizens that weren't lucky enough to escape. But at this point, the Mandalorians come out of hyperspace, led by Din Djarin, who begins an attack to distract them. Leading away the pirate fighters, Bo-Katan is able to get in and, using the drop bay in her fighter, drops out multiple Mandalorians to begin attacking the pirates in the city and begin to slowly take it back. Din flies towards the lava flats so he can create a distraction for Bo to be able to attack the pirates' main ship. And back in the city, the Mandalorians are slowly advancing through the city, but are quickly pinned down by a turret placed on top of Magistrate Karga's office. The fighters are recalled, and Din and Bo manage to take all but one out, and the last pirate flees for his life. Back in the city, the pirate with the large shirt is taken out by the armorer, and the rest of the pirates begin to flee the city, but are trapped between Grief Karga and the citizens and the Mandalorians. Knowing there is no way out, Shard orders for his forces to begin to fire upon the city, and Din and Bo go for a quick attack run, taking out the final engine to his ship, causing it to crash towards the edge of the town and blow up in a fiery explosion. Grief Karga is highly thankful, and as the people celebrate the Mandalorians, he promises them a sizable portion of land for them to be able to have a home on. And while this is happening, the armor has called Bo-Katan to meet with her, and Pez Vizsla leads her down. She begins to have a conversation with the armorer as she begins to discuss the Mandalorian Forge and the Great One on Mandalore, and how this smaller one still helps, but their people are divided. She then tells Bo-Katan to remove her helmet, and although Bo-Katan questions this, the armorer says to trust her, and Bo-Katan does this. Once she has her helmet removed, the armorer begins to explain her plans, saying that Bo is one who works both the way and the way of the new Mandalorians, and that she could be the one that could unite their people together and be able to lead them on, and leads Bo with her helmet removed to tell everyone her plans and that they are going to be uniting the two groups of Mandalorians through Bo-Katan, who's going to go and recruit more Mandalorians to their cause, and begins to imply that not all Mandalorians have to follow the way. Out in space, Tiva has come across a derelict Lambda-class shuttle and is very curious about it. Beginning an investigation, he gets online with the New Republic and begins to investigate into the wreckage of the ship and quickly figures out this was the ship transporting Moff Gideon, and looking deeper into it, he sees that Gideon's body is not in there and that he has been rescued. Trying to figure out who did it, he begins to scan around the ship and finds Beskar alloy inside of it, realizing that some faction of Mandalorians has done this. A Quarren ship is attacked by an Imperial light fighter, and the Quarren is initially scared, thinking it is the Imperials, and tries to bargain with them, but quickly realizes that this is actually Mandalorians who have come to rescue a Mon Calamari prince who is on board the ship, even though he is there willingly. They don't care because they were paid to do this job, and although the Quarren captain doesn't want to let him leave, she knows that this is the only way for her and her crew to survive, and she begs him to leave and saying this will never work out. And although they are both heartbroken, they are forced to separate as the Mandalorians return him to his family. On the planet of Plezier 15, Bo, Din, and Grogu go to land and meet with the Mandalorians who once served under Bo Katan but took the fleet from her. And while there, they go into a car and ask it to take them to the Mandalorians, but it instead takes them to meet with the higher ups of the planet, meeting with the Queen and her husband, an ex Imperial who was redeemed through the amnesty program. They request both Bo and Din to help them out with the problems on their planet and explain that through the New Republic charter they have, and since they have an ex Imperial in the higher ups of the government, they're not allowed to have their own military, or citizens aren't allowed to own weapons, and that they need them to help go and disable a series of rogue droids that go and attack the different people in the city, and it's causing a major problem for them. And with his hatred of droids, Dan quickly agrees to help, and they go to meet with the main security chief, who shows them different pieces of footage of the attacks, and they begin to go and try to track down the problems. First, going to the Ugnaughts that helped reprogram the droids, talking to them using his experience from dealing with Queel. Den manages to get enough information out of them to begin his investigation with Bo, and they are given the most likely location of the next male functioning droid, which is at a shipping yard. There, Bo tries to talk to the reprogrammed B1 battle droid who is in charge, but Dan decides to take matters into his own hands and begins to kick the B2 super battle droids that are moving different boxes around, and until one of them begins to react and one of the super battle droids begins to flee and runs through the crowded city streets, throwing different items at them and trying to escape. But Din and Bo are eventually able to take it down and begin to pull information from it, learning that it went to a local droid bar and decide to go check it out. Bo tells Din to let her lead in there, and he is not going to be very successful with his line of thinking. Din completely ignores her and begins to threaten the droid that is serving there, and isn't getting far until Bo uses diplomacy to be able to talk to him and reason things out. And the droid decides to help them, bringing him to the back and explaining everything that this is not something they would want, and this is one of the few places that droids are accepted in the galaxy. and they begin to investigate into the fact that there's a type of fuel that is being put into the droids that could be used to reprogram them. And to take a sample from the Super Battle droid they previously destroyed and begin to analyze it and learn that nanodroids are actually inside of the mixture and are being used to reprogram the droids. And as they wonder if the nanodroids are still active, the droid used to take the sample begins to go nuts and attack them, although Din is quickly able to cut it down with the dark saber. Beginning to investigate more into where these nanodroids could have come from, they quickly realize that the head of security is behind it and go to confront him. Going up to the facility, they begin to question him, and things quickly escalate as he jumps up and threatens to hit a button that will reprogram all the droids to go and attack. As the man begins to profess his loyalty to the Separatists and rant how Count Dooku was a visionary who was taken down too soon by the Jedi, he is quickly hit by a stun blast from Bo-Katan, knocking him out. He is then brought before the rulers, who he begs for mercy for and admits to his crime, and he is simply just exiled to their moon and sent away. After this, the queen goes and gives both Din and Bo the key to the planet, and then knights Grogu, who she spent a significant amount of time with, as they tracked down the leads for this case. Making it to the Mandalorian camp, Bo goes to reclaim her position as leader and challenges the current leader of the group, Axe Wolves, to a fight and is ultimately able to win it, sparing his life, being tired of Mandalorians killing Mandalorians. She goes and asks them to follow her, and X points out that she does not wield the dark saber, and by their way, there is no claim for her to lead them without it, and Din says that she will get it and she deserves it, and they point out that Bo simply can't just take it, but Din says that when on Mandalore he was captured, and after this, Bo managed to defeat the one who captured him by right making the darksaber hers and asking the other Mandalorians if this is not their way, and they agree as Din hands Bo the darksaber. She ignites it and becomes the leader of this Mandalorian faction. On Coruscant, Elia Kane sneaks through the streets and eventually makes it to a corner where an Imperial probe droid is waiting. Giving her TK number, she begins to contact Moff Gideon and gives him updates on everything going on and tells him how the pirates failed to take Navarro, explaining that the Mandalorians managed to go in and rescue everyone. Gideon thanks her for the information and signs off. Going through his base, he passes by many Imperial super commandos and makes it into a meeting of the Imperial War Council. There are many Imperials, including Galad Pelion and Brendel Hux, are there discussing the Imperial plans and the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn. As Gideon begins to question this, Pelion goes and defends the Admiral, saying that his return will be soon and this will help turn the tide for the Empire. They then begin to discuss everything going on with Dr. Pershing and Project Necromancer, as Gideon explains that Pershing was taken out by the New Republic into prison and he is currently unavailable, not telling them that his mind was fried, and going on to saying he needs more resources, saying that the Mandalorians seem likely to retake Mandalore. The Imperials agree to give him the resources he needs, and Gideon signs off. On Navarro, the Mandalorian fleet appears and heads to the Mandalorian base camp, where they meet up with their fellow Mandalorians, meeting for the first time. Grief Karga comes by to welcome them and gives Din a wine from Coruscant. He then says he has another gift for him and brings him back to the city, where he shows off the repurposed body of IG-11, now called IG-12, is now fully controllable droid that Grogu could sit in. With Grogu being placed in it, he gets to try it around and now has the capability to give simple yes or no answers through using IG-11 and pre-programmed buttons. Although Din does reject this initially, Grogu continues to spam the yes button, saying that he wants this, and Din eventually gives in. Grogu uses his new suit to go to a food vendor and both grabs a piece of food and a melon fruit. Din is forced to pay for both as Grogu eats some of the food and crushes the fruit. Bo-Katan, at the Mandalorian's feast, comes to them and tells everyone it's time to retake Mandalore. She asks for volunteers from both the faction that follows the Way and the ones that follow the Darksaber. In beginning with Din Djarin, Pez Vizsla, Casca Reeves, and Axe Wolves, with many more volunteer for the mission, as the armorer finally turns and says that she will join them. The Mandalorians come out of hyperspace above Mandalore and send down a single fighter with all the volunteers, dropping off the Mandalorians inside of the drop chutes. They go and secure the landing area and give enough time for the fighter to land and let everyone out so they can begin their march to find the Great Forge of Mandalore. While going through the ruins of the planet, they see a large land vessel heading towards them, and they prepare to fight if needed. But many of the Mandalorians notice that there are other Mandalorians on board who were survivors from the Purge. They all launch off and begin to meet up with them and apologize to Bo-Katan for failing her. They board the ship and begin to head out as Bo-Katan and everyone begin to speak of Mandalorian history and how the Children of the Watch managed to survive the Great Purge, and the others were roaming the planet until the war ended and have been traded ever since. Bo-Katan then begins to apologize, saying that they didn't fail Mandalore, that she did. She did surrender to Moff Gideon to try and get her people spared, but it ultimately wound up not working out, and he betrayed them. This is how he got the Darksaber, and she is greatly sorry for this. A little later on, she is very worried about being able to keep the Mandalorian factions together, as Din goes up to her and says that he was wrong about the other Mandalorians, saying that they were not selfish. But Bo says that she was, and that this was all her fault, that her leadership caused Mandalore to be destroyed. Din reassures her that this isn't the case and that she is honorable, and this is why he follows her, and others will be able to see this. Bo thanks him, and they decide to continue on, although they are sending some of the injured Mandalorians that survived on Mandalore back up, as they are led to the Great Forge by the Mandalorians who were still well enough to fight that were stranded on the planet. On the way to the Great Forge, Pez Vizsla and X Wolves begin to get into an argument over a game and then go to fight each other, with the fight going pretty evenly until Grogu steps in, using IG-12 to stop the fight. At the same time, the armor finally reaches the Mandalorian fleet and asks them for medical assistance. Making it to the Great Forge, they are ambushed by a creature, and they are forced to abandon their ship as it is destroyed by it, and everyone does manage to escape using their jetpacks to escape. Making it to the entrance to the Great Forge, they begin to go down and look upon it, but quickly hear jetpacks going off and see an army of Imperial super commandos flying towards them. One of the Mandalorians does manage to escape to go and warn the fleet and try and get reinforcements, as the rest begin to hold them off and begin to push them back into the forge, but they quickly realize it's a trap as blast doors drop down and they see a massive Imperial facility. Din is trapped on the other side of the blast doors and tries to fight off the Imperial super commandos, but he is quickly overwhelmed as he is taken prisoner by them. A man in black armor comes down and takes command. Quickly, everyone realizes that this is Moff Gideon, and he begins to threaten them, telling them to take Din away and to launch the fleet to go and take the Mandalorian fleet by surprise. As everyone begins to panic, Gideon gloats and tells Bo-Katan to return the Darksaber to him. Bo-Katan looks at everyone and they agree as they begin to fire upon the blast door. She takes out the Darksaber and begins to cut an exit out for them to escape through. As they begin to retreat, Paz Vizsla covers them from the rear, and once they've all escaped, knowing that there is only one way for this to end, he forces the blast door closed once again and goes on a final stand, trying to take out as many Imperials as he possibly can. Although he takes down almost all the super commandos, he is ambushed by the Praetorian guards, who quickly manage to beat him down and stab him multiple times, leaving him behind to die as they return to Gideon. Bo-Katan leads Mandalorian forces through the wreckage of Mandalore, heading to an extraction point. They begin to blast through the enemies. Meanwhile, Dan is imprisoned, being taken away. He manages to cut through some of the bonds holding him and begins to fight off the super commandos holding him prisoner. He is not able to do this well until Grogu comes in IG-12 and manages to rescue Din. The rest of the Mandalorians manage to blow a tunnel behind them, and this gives them some time. Back with Din, he contacts R5 to be able to hack into the base's systems and be able to pull up the schematics to get him to Moff Gideon. R5 flies down using his rocket thrusters as Din grabs a jetpack from one of the super commandos to have one in case he needs it. The Imperials finally prep their TIE interceptors and bombers, launch to attack the Mandalorian fleet. Gideon tracks Din and Grogu as they move throughout the facility, and R5 manages to finally download the schematics and sends them to Din. Axe Wolves manages to reach the Mandalorian fleet, where he enters into it and tells everyone to abandon ship. He's going to be manning the light cruiser as a distraction, and everyone else is to go down to the surface to help out Bo Katan. As everyone begins to flee and head towards the surface, just a few seconds later, the Imperial fleet comes out and begins to attack the former Imperial light cruiser now controlled by the Mandalorians. The cruiser takes major damage and begins to go down. Din reaches a hallway filled with Imperial super commandos behind different levels of shields. Din contacts R5 once again and tells him to open the gates one by one so he can fight his way through. And doing this for the first few, Din is unarmed and slowly uses the opportunity to fight through the different Imperials and take more weapons so he can continue on in his fight. R5 is temporarily distracted by a mouse droid, and this gives Din just a few seconds to have him pleading for R5 to open the final gate, and R5 does go and do it, and Din manages to finish off the rest of the Super Commandos. Din and Grogu reach a room that is filled with clones, and Din is at first surprised and quickly realizes that Gideon has been cloning himself. Reassuring Grogu that they are only clones, Din sets all the pods to self-destruct as they continue on towards Gideon. The rest of the Mandalorians are in complete awe when they are brought to a cave filled with green plant life. Bo-Katan wonders what has happened here, and the Mandalorian survivors quickly explain that they were able to create farms in these caves after the bombing of Mandalore. Bo is really impressed and is quickly contacted by the other Mandalorians who have made it down so they can go for a final assault on Gideon's stronghold. Bo leads the army of Mandalorians, igniting the dark saber and taking the lead in the attack. Din and Grogu reach Gideon's command center and begin to look for Gideon. Gideon quickly reveals himself and begins to go off on Din for destroying his clones, which were supposed to be the ultimate project, making for sensitive clones of himself. Din goes in to fight Gideon, but stands no chance against Gideon's Dark Trooper armor and the Praetorian guards that are with him. Din is quickly beat down by them, and Grogu taunts the guards to come after him, leaving Din to deal with Gideon. Not wanting Grogu to do this, Din tries to finish off Gideon, but is not doing well. Bo-Katan flies in and knocks Gideon off and tells Din to go rescue Grogu and she'll deal with Gideon. Gideon grabs a weapon of the Praetorian Guards, using it to battle Bo with the dark saber. The two begin their ultimate duel, with Gideon telling Bo-Katan she should just surrender to him. After losing IG-12, Grogu begins to jump around, avoiding the weapons of the Praetorian Guards. But when Din enters into the room, the two work together to defeat the guards, and after this victory, they head out to help Bo-Katan against Gideon. Sadly for them, the fight is not going well. With the enhanced Dark Trooper armor that Gideon has, he manages to break through Bo-Katan's defenses and crushes the Darksaber, damaging it so the blade can no longer be ignited. Din and Bo then go off on Gideon using their weapons to keep some distance and start to wear him down. Axe Wolves abandons the Mandalorian controlled light cruiser and tells Bo Katan and all the other Mandalorians to abandon the Imperial base since he's put the light cruiser on a direct collision course with Gideon's base to destroy it. Both Din and Bo are still stuck in combat with Gideon, and there is no way out for them, as the light cruiser blasts into a fiery explosion after crashing into the base. Gideon is consumed by the fire, and both Din and Bo go around Grogu trying to protect him, but Grogu, using the Force, manages to keep the fire from hitting any of them, keeping them all safe. Din, Bo, and Grogu all look upon the wreckage of the Imperial base. Seeing no signs of Gideon, they go to celebrate their victory. At the Sacred Waters, Pez Vizsla's son is once again given his ceremony to becoming a true Mandalorian since the last was interrupted. Fully becoming a Mandalorian, he continues on. Din brings Grogu forward and says that Grogu will now become his Mandalorian apprentice. The armorer rejects this at first, saying that Grogu is too young to speak the creed, but Din points out if Grogu's parent does give him permission, then he could become a Mandalorian apprentice. The armorer points out that they don't know who Grogu's parents are. They could be dead or halfway across the galaxy, but Din says that he would like to formally adopt Grogu as his son. The armorer accepts this and tells Din that he must go off on his own now and begin to train Grogu like his master trained him when he was a child. She also declares that Grogu's new name is Din Grogu. Grogu reaches out with the Force and connects with the Mythsaur, and at the Great Mandalorian Forge, Bo-Katan lights it and claims her place as the leader of the Mandalorians. Mandalorians from both factions begin to hit their armor together, yelling for Mandalore. Din and Grogu go to visit Carson Teva in the New Republic base, and Din begins to make a proposal to him that he will help the New Republic clean out Imperial remnants from the Outer Rim since they don't have the resources to it. Teva says that it would never be officially allowed, and Din says he knows, and he knows that Teva won't be saying anything about it. Teva agrees and gives Din the down payment he wants, being a IG head so he could fully repair IG-11. Din and Grogu go to Nevarro, where they meet up with Grief Karga. Karga agrees to give Din a house on the outskirts of the town where he could live in between jobs. Din then says he has a gift for Karga and Nevarro as he reveals the rebuilt IG-11 to be their new marshal. And Din, at his new house, sits back and watches as Grogu plays with a frog. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.